It started like any ordinary afternoon. Bright sky, busy sidewalks, the usual buzz of a weekday hustle. But then, something happened that would not only outrage an entire community, but also ignite a nationwide debate on dignity, respect, and the law. Imagine walking into your favorite cafe, just another pit stop in your daily routine, and suddenly, a scene unfolds that makes your heart race. A man, confident and composed, stands at the counter refusing entry to a customer. But this isn't just any customer. This is a veteran. A man who wore the uniform, served the country, and now depends on his loyal service dog for basic, daily function. And just like that, without warning, without empathy, the door is metaphorically and literally slammed shut. What happens next, you won't believe. Now, hold on. Before you jump to conclusions, before you say, "That's just wrong," I want you to stay with me. Because what you think is happening goes much deeper. And yes, you clicked on this video because you wanted to know how a man could have the audacity to deny a service dog entry. But you're about to get more than just that answer. You're about to see what happens when the law is on the side of the quiet, overlooked hero, and when justice shows up in a suit, holding a folder full of federal statutes, ready to set the record straight. I know, in a world flooded with viral clips and half-told stories, you're probably wondering, is this just another outrage bait? I get it. You've seen headlines, maybe even rants online. But here's the deal. I'm not here to feed you another forgettable story. I'm here to take you inside it. To show you what it really means to stand up for someone when no one else will. And if you're someone who believes in fairness, in truth, in standing tall even when it's uncomfortable, then this story is for you. Because once the attorney walks through that cafe door, what unfolds isn't just a legal showdown, it's a lesson in humanity you won't forget. So take a breath, sit tight, and don't even think about skipping ahead. Because every detail in this story matters. From the man behind the counter to the dog lying silently by his owner's side, to the attorney whose calm voice cuts through the noise like a knife. Every thread weaves into a moment that'll challenge what you thought you knew about service dogs, veterans, and the laws that protect them. I'm going to walk you through the entire event, what led up to it, the confrontation, the aftermath, and most importantly, what you can learn from it. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll not only have your answer, you'll have a whole new perspective. Let me bring you in close. Because this story, it could happen to anyone. Maybe you've seen a service dog and wondered what the rules really are. Maybe you've had doubts or questions. Or maybe, like many Americans, you just want to know what your rights are, whether you're a business owner, a veteran, or a bystander. This isn't just about one man being denied service. It's about the daily battles that don't make the news. The silent struggles of people living with disabilities. The assumptions. The microaggressions. The systems we trust, and the moments they fail. But also, it's about redemption, about holding people accountable, and about what happens when someone with power uses it to do the right thing, not for headlines but for justice. Now, let me paint the scene for you. It's a small-town coffee shop, not the kind you'd expect drama from. Local baristas, families dropping in after school, elderly folks sipping black coffee while flipping through local newspapers. And in walks this man. A veteran, maybe mid-40s, with a sturdy build and eyes that clearly seen more than most of us ever will. At his side, a Labrador retriever wearing a service vest.
Calm.
Alert. Doing exactly what he's trained to do. They approach the counter. No drama. No disturbance. But then, out of nowhere, the manager steps forward. Arms crossed. Firm stance. And with a voice loud enough to turn heads, he says, "Sorry, no dogs allowed in here." Let that sink in. No dogs allowed. Even as the vest clearly labels this as a service animal. Even as the veteran calmly explains his rights. The tension in the room shifts from caffeine buzz to confusion. Some customers glance away. Others freeze, not knowing whether to step in. And you're about to witness how one decision can spiral into something much bigger. This video will take you into the very moment the denial happens, but that's only the beginning. Because as we zoom out, you'll meet the woman who saw it all from the window and started filming. The teenage worker behind the counter who whispered, "I think he's a veteran." And most importantly, you'll meet the attorney. The one who doesn't just practice law, but lives it. A former JAG officer who doesn't hesitate when he hears what happened. He picks up the phone. He calls the cafe. And what he says, it changes everything. So if you've ever wondered how far the law goes to protect service animals, or what legal power a veteran can wield when wronged, this is the story that will answer that. But don't think it ends in the courtroom. No. This isn't about punishment. It's about education, advocacy, and a second chance. It's about the moment a mistake turns into a teachable moment for a whole community. And maybe for all of us. And right now, you might be wondering, did the business owner double down? Did the veteran walk away quietly? Or did that attorney make them wish they had thought twice before opening their mouth? I promise you, the twist will catch you off guard. But to get there, you need to hear how it all unfolds. From the moment the veteran left the cafe, feeling humiliated, to the day the letter from the attorney landed on the business's doorstep. From the whispers in the community to the public apology that may or may not have come too late. Stay with me because what comes next will make you question not just what happened, but what you would do if you were in that cafe. And trust me, you're going to want to see what happens when the law walks through that door. Before the coffee shop confrontation made its rounds on social media, before hashtags began trending and attorneys got involved, the man at the center of it all, Samuel Sam Barrett, had been trying to live a quiet life. Just 3 months out of active duty, Sam was adjusting to civilian life the only way he knew how, slowly, carefully, and with the help of his loyal service dog, Ranger. A yellow Labrador trained through a veteran support program, Ranger wasn't just a companion, he was Sam's lifeline. From flashbacks that hit him like a freight train in the middle of the night, to anxiety that crept in during the most mundane tasks, Ranger was there, steady as ever, grounding Sam when the invisible wounds of war tried to pull him under. Most days, you'd find Sam doing the same things anyone else would. Morning walks, a quick stop at the hardware store, volunteering at the local VA center, where he helped other vets navigate paperwork and tell their stories. He wasn't looking for attention, never asked for sympathy. He just wanted peace. But beneath that calm surface was a man who'd seen too much, lost too much, and carried burdens he never talked about. That cafe, the one where everything unraveled, had actually been a routine stop for Sam. The staff usually nodded politely, some even gave Ranger a scratch behind the ear. But that day, something fell off from the moment he walked in. There was a new face behind the counter. A shift in energy. A man in his late 30s, sharply dressed but rigid. Too rigid for a place known for its laid-back charm. Customers had noticed him a few times before. He wasn't the owner, but rumor had it he was helping out while the actual manager was away. No one knew much about him. No name tag. No friendly banter. Just silence and a clipboard. A couple of regulars had whispered that he might have been related to the landlord, someone checking in to make sure the business was running smoothly. Whatever the case, he had a way of watching people that made even longtime customers feel like they were being judged. And when Sam walked in that day, that man was already watching. What no one knew, at least not yet, was that Sam had already crossed paths with someone tied to the cafe just a few weeks earlier. At a local city council meeting, Sam had spoken up about the lack of accessibility in small businesses. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even trying to call anyone out. He simply shared his experience, how a lack of ramps or refusal to allow service dogs wasn't just frustrating, it was dangerous. What he didn't realize then was that his remarks had rubbed someone the wrong way. A certain business investor who didn't appreciate being told how to run things, especially not by a disabled guy with a dog. Those were the exact words overheard by another attendee, whispered in the hallway, when he thought no one was listening. But someone was. And that's where things get murky. Because now we're not just talking about a misunderstanding. We're talking about intent, prejudice, and possibly retaliation. That day at the cafe wasn't just a one-off incident. It might have been planned. A silent act of pushback. An example made of Sam to keep others quiet. But if that was the case, whoever orchestrated it had no idea who they were dealing with. Sam may have been calm, but he wasn't naive. And while he didn't react in anger, he did something far more powerful. He took mental notes. He watched. He listened. And when he left, he didn't storm out or raise his voice. He simply looked the man in the eye and said, "You'll be hearing from someone." And he meant it. What followed wasn't immediate, but it was deliberate. Sam reached out to someone he trusted, David Corbin, a decorated attorney and former JAG officer who had represented veterans in discrimination cases across the country. David wasn't just an expert in ADA law, he was relentless when it came to justice. He'd taken on cases others were too scared to touch, from massive corporate chains to local city councils, and he had a habit of turning small infractions into national conversations. When Sam called, David didn't hesitate. He cleared his schedule, reviewed the footage sent to him by a witness, and started digging. But here's where things take another turn. Because just as David began his legal prep, someone else started asking questions too. A journalist from a local paper who had received an anonymous tip about the cafe. But the tip wasn't about the incident. It was about a string of previous complaints that had never gone public. Apparently, Sam wasn't the first person with a disability to be turned away. A young woman with epilepsy. An elderly man with a hearing dog. Each instance chalked up to misunderstandings, swept under the rug before they gained traction. And in each case, there was one common denominator, the same man who denied Sam entry. Now, suddenly, this isn't just about one service dog or one bad decision. It's about a pattern, a practice, maybe even a policy that was quietly enforced behind closed doors, despite being completely illegal. And that's where the plot thickens. Because as David prepares to file formal charges under the Americans with Disabilities Act, strange things start happening. Phone calls go unanswered. Staff members at the cafe start avoiding eye contact. The security footage from the day of the incident goes missing. Even the online reviews begin to shift, with several suspiciously glowing 5-star posts popping up overnight, all from accounts created the same week. Someone's trying to cover tracks. But the question is, why go to such lengths? What's really at stake here? Is it just pride? Legal liability? Or is there something bigger beneath the surface? Rumors start to spread that the cafe is a front for a larger real estate investment group, that the man behind the counter may be more than just a family friend. And when David's office receives an envelope with no return address containing what looks like internal memos referencing a no-dog policy for insurance reasons, things go from suspicious to potentially criminal. Yet, despite the pressure mounting, Sam remains composed. He doesn't want revenge, he wants truth. And he wants to make sure no other veteran, no other person relying on a service animal is ever made to feel small again. But the more attention this story gets, the more people start picking sides. The cafe's loyal customers defend the staff, saying it was a misunderstanding. A few even accuse Sam of playing victim for a payout, despite there being no lawsuit yet. Meanwhile, veterans groups across the country rally behind him, flooding social media with stories of their own mistreatment. The tension builds, both online and off. And just when it seems like the truth is starting to surface, something unexpected happens. David receives a call from a former cafe employee who wants to talk. She says she knows who that man behind the counter really is. She says there's a reason he reacted the way he did. But before she can say more, she hangs up. No name. No way to trace the call. Just one haunting sentence that David can't shake. He wasn't supposed to be there that day. So now, the mystery deepens. Who is this man? Why was he there? And what does he have to hide? Stick around, because the next part of the story will pull back the curtain. And what's behind it may just change everything you thought you knew. David Corbin had handled some high-pressure cases before, but this one was beginning to feel different. Not just legally complex, off. Every time he thought he had a solid lead, something slipped through his fingers. The employee who called him anonymously never followed up. Her number was untraceable. Then, the witness who filmed the video? She messaged to say she'd prefer not to be involved anymore. No explanation. She deleted the video from her social media and blocked David's number. It was as if someone had gotten to her. David wasn't one for conspiracy theories, but this wasn't normal. And just when he tried to track down the cafe's former manager, the one who was supposedly on vacation during the incident, he found out she had abruptly quit weeks before. No public reason. No contact info. Just vanished. At first, Sam tried to keep his distance from all the legal noise. He wanted justice, sure, but he wasn't looking to become some kind of online symbol. But the more the walls started closing in on the truth, the more he realized this wasn't just about him anymore. There were too many unanswered questions. Too many veterans watching closely.
So he leaned in.
He reached out to some local contacts, people who knew the small business community well. What he uncovered shook him. The man who had refused him service, the one who claimed to just be helping out at the register, wasn't listed as an employee. Not on payroll. Not on permits. Not even in any public business record connected to the cafe. But his face. It matched an old photo Sam recognized from his days in the service. That's when things got personal. Back in his second deployment, Sam had been part of a special intelligence team tasked with monitoring internal threats, soldiers who had started slipping, breaking protocol, crossing lines. One of those soldiers had been dishonorably discharged after an ugly incident involving a cover-up in a foreign village. The man's name was Thomas R. Blackwell. And when Sam pulled up a scanned image of that man's military ID from years ago, his stomach dropped.
It was the same man from the cafe.
Older, thinner maybe, but the same cold eyes. And here he was again, not just managing a local business, but standing in the way of a decorated vet, once more. David was furious. He began drafting a formal complaint to the Department of Justice and preparing evidence for a civil suit under ADA law. But then, just 2 days later, his office was broken into. Nothing major was stolen, no computers, no cash. But the folder with Sam's case?
Gone. Completely.
Not a trace left. No sign of forced entry. The building's security footage had malfunctioned for 3 hours that evening. It felt calculated.
Clean.
Like someone had known exactly what they were looking for. To make things worse, David received a strange letter in the mail. No return address. No signature. Just a typed note on plain white paper. You don't know who you're dealing with. Let this one go. Most people would call the cops, but David had been in enough battles to know what real intimidation looks like, and this was subtle, quiet, and far more dangerous. He decided not to tell Sam.
Not yet.
Meanwhile, Sam was still digging, piecing together fragments from old service logs and cross-referencing what little he could find online. He was sure now, Thomas Blackwell had changed his name. A quick public records search showed a name change request filed 2 years after his discharge. But what was harder to explain was how someone like him, with that kind of past, ended up managing a popular business in broad daylight with no pushback. Someone was protecting him. And the deeper Sam and David went, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a case about a service dog being denied access. This was about exposure. About secrets someone was desperate to keep hidden. Then came the biggest blow yet. David scheduled a meeting with a local ADA compliance officer to discuss the complaint. When he arrived, he was surprised to find a different official in the office. She told him, politely but firmly, that the investigation had been closed before it even began. When David demanded answers, she shrugged and said, it was handled internally. No need for escalation. David knew what that meant. Someone high up had buried it. Quietly. Efficiently. Like they'd done it before. Back at home, Sam received a package. No name. No note. Inside was a USB drive. Nervously, he plugged it into his laptop. A grainy video loaded. Footage from inside a private military contractor's training facility, years old. In it, you could see a man, Blackwell, arguing with someone out of frame. Then, as the video played on, a blurry figure entered. Sam paused it.
Zoomed in.
His jaw clenched. The figure was him. This wasn't just coincidence. This was a threat. A reminder. Someone wanted him to remember that what happened overseas wasn't forgotten. That if he kept digging, more might come out. Sam sat back, heart racing. This wasn't just a legal fight anymore. This was a warning. A war he thought he'd left behind had just followed him home. And right when he thought it couldn't get worse, he got a text from a contact he hadn't heard from in years. One line. Don't trust David. He knows more than he's telling you. The screen went dark. And so did the line. Now the question isn't just who's hiding the truth, but who's pretending to uncover it. Want to know what happens next? Trust me, you're going to want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. While Sam sat frozen, staring at the message on his phone, a different storm was brewing miles away. Jessica Lane, a former military therapist who had worked closely with Sam during his transition back into civilian life, was finishing her shift at the VA hospital when she found a manila envelope waiting on her car windshield. No name, no return address, no markings, just her name written in thick black marker across the front. She glanced around the nearly empty parking lot, heart pounding a little harder than it should. Inside the envelope was a stack of printed emails. At first glance, they looked like standard correspondence between veterans and support staff, but then she saw it. Her name. Her words. Her notes about Sam, including confidential details from their sessions. Things he never told anyone else. Things that could easily be twisted. On the last page, someone had scribbled a message in red ink. Your silence kept him alive once. Don't change that now. Jessica didn't scare easily. But this wasn't just about breaching privacy. Someone had gone into secure government servers, found archived therapy logs, and weaponized them. And not just hers. The documents also referenced another name, Dr. Julian Marks, a behavioral specialist who had flagged Blackwell as mentally unstable during a routine psychological review years ago. Julian had left the military abruptly after that, no explanation. Jessica hadn't heard from him in over a decade, but the envelope seemed to suggest a connection. If someone was trying to protect Blackwell, they weren't just erasing evidence, they were going after people who saw too much. Back at David's office, the mood had shifted. Sam confronted him with a cryptic message accusing him of hiding something. David was caught off guard, but not entirely surprised. He hesitated, then finally confessed. Years ago, before he became a civil rights attorney, David had briefly worked as a legal liaison for a private contractor that provided security consulting in conflict zones. It was a job he'd left behind, ashamed of what he'd witnessed but too afraid to report. One of the men involved in a particularly brutal operation overseas had been Blackwell. David hadn't recognized him at first. Too much time had passed, but once he did, he knew he had to act fast. He hadn't told Sam because he feared it would break the case open too soon, or worse, get Sam hurt. But now, with pressure mounting from all sides, he realized staying quiet had only made things more dangerous. The twist threw everything into disarray. If David had ties to the very organization that may have protected Blackwell, could he still be trusted? Or had his involvement all along been part of a bigger plan? Sam didn't know what to believe anymore. Every step forward now seemed to uncover a new layer of betrayal, a new person who wasn't what they seemed. He thought back to the message, "Don't trust David." Could it have been true? Or was someone playing him, turning allies into suspects to keep the truth buried deeper? Just as doubt started to fester, a new piece of evidence surfaced that turned the case upside down. A young man named Luis Medina, a part-time barista at the cafe and college journalism major, reached out through an encrypted message board used by whistleblowers. He claimed to have seen everything that happened the day Sam was denied entry, and more. He said there were hidden cameras in the back of the shop, not for security but for something else entirely. Luis had overheard Blackwell having a hushed argument with someone over the phone about protecting assets and controlling narrative fallout. He thought it had something to do with business until he stumbled across a video feed that showed not just the cafe floor, but also the alley behind it, where shady handoffs occurred, often involving people who didn't work there. Luis agreed to meet David and Sam, but just hours before the meeting, he went dark. Phone off. Social accounts deactivated. Then came a text from his number to Sam's phone. "I shouldn't have said anything. Forget what I told you. This is bigger than you think." And just like that, another potential witness disappeared. Now Sam was caught in a maze of secrets where nothing was as it seemed. Therapists being warned, lawyers with buried pasts, hidden surveillance, and people going missing the moment they speak up. And behind it all, one man with a shadowy history that seemed to bend the world around him. The deeper Sam went, the more it felt like he was stepping into something engineered to protect not just one individual, but an entire system, one that had learned how to bury its mistakes with silence, threats, and power. But then came a final, chilling twist. Sam received a secure envelope, hand-delivered with no sender listed. Inside was a single photograph. It showed him just 2 days ago, leaving the VA clinic. Behind him, blurry but unmistakable, was someone watching from across the street. Not just anyone. It was Julian Marks.
Alive.
And clearly still watching. Something about this wasn't right. Something about everyone wasn't right. And if Sam wanted to get to the bottom of it, he'd have to question everything, including the people who claimed to be helping him. Because now, the mystery wasn't just who was hiding the truth, it was why so many people wanted it buried. And the answer was far more dangerous than he ever imagined. The next 48 hours unraveled everything Sam thought he understood. It started with a silence that shouldn't have felt strange, but did. Jessica, who had always responded within minutes, didn't answer her phone all day. No texts. No calls. No social media activity. At first, Sam told himself she was just busy, caught up in work at the VA hospital or needing space after the envelope incident. But by midnight, when he still hadn't heard anything, the anxiety that had been simmering at the back of his mind began to boil over. He tried her office, her roommate, even called her emergency contact listed in the VA database. No one had seen her. Her car was still in the hospital parking lot. But the security guard on duty swore she never left through the main doors. Sam drove there himself, half in disbelief. When he saw Jessica's car in its usual spot under the lamplight, the weight of it hit him like a gut punch. The interior was untouched, doors locked, keys gone. There was no forced entry, no signs of struggle. Just the eerie, paralyzing sense that she had vanished in plain sight. A nurse walked by, noticing Sam pacing by the car. She said something that chilled him. Funny thing is, I saw her leave around 7, but she wasn't alone. A man in a gray suit was walking right behind her. Thought he was one of those federal types. Sam asked for details, but the nurse could only describe the man vaguely. Tall, clean-cut, no badge, no visible ID. Someone who didn't want to be remembered. That night, back in his apartment, the walls felt closer than usual. Every creak made Sam turn his head. He sat in the dark, trying to piece it all together, but his thoughts wouldn't settle. His military training kicked in. He checked the locks, scanned the windows, made sure nothing had been tampered with. But no amount of preparation could quiet the sinking feeling in his chest. Jessica didn't just leave. She was taken, or at least silenced. And someone had gone to great lengths to make it look clean. Professional. Like she'd never existed. Then just past 3 a.m., Sam heard something. Not loud, but enough. A click. A shadow moved across the front of his apartment. He froze, every muscle tensed, the room drenched in that specific kind of fear that only comes when you realize you are no longer alone. He stayed still, eyes locked on the door, hand resting near his service pistol out of instinct, not aggression. The doorknob didn't turn, but he heard retreating footsteps and a faint hum of an engine starting. By the time he reached the window, a black SUV was turning the corner without plates. The message was clear: we see you. We're this close. Sam wasn't paranoid. He was awake. And now he knew this went far deeper than Blackwell or a denied service dog complaint. This was organized. Coordinated. The kind of thing you don't read about in the news because the stories never make it that far. And if Jessica had been targeted, he had no doubt he was next. He spent the rest of the night going through old notes, maps, contacts, everything he'd gathered so far. That photo of Dr. Julian Marks haunted him. If Julian was alive and watching from the shadows, then there had to be a reason. Maybe he was trying to help, or maybe he was making sure Sam didn't get too close. Either way, Julian was no longer just a ghost from the past. He was back. And he had chosen now to show his face. The paranoia began to consume every thought. Sam couldn't step outside without scanning rooftops. He couldn't drive without checking his rearview mirror every 2 minutes. But he couldn't stop either, because something bigger was being hidden, and now someone had taken Jessica to keep it that way. The only clue he had was a half-burnt page found under her windshield wiper, likely missed by whoever grabbed her. It had 2 words, hastily scribbled: Moss Ridge. He didn't recognize the name. Was it a place? A person? A code? A buried military operation? He started digging and found only one result with any relevance: Moss Ridge Veterans Retreat, a long-shut facility used in the early 2000s for PTSD rehabilitation, later shuttered after rumors of patient mistreatment and experimental drug trials. The files were sealed. The whistleblowers disappeared. And guess who had once been on the advisory board? Dr. Julian Marks. Now the storm inside Sam had a new name: Moss Ridge. Jessica's disappearance wasn't a coincidence. It was a move in a larger game, a game that had been in motion for years, and he had just stumbled into its center. David tried to pull him back, said they should regroup, work through the legal system, avoid escalating things. But Sam could see it in his eyes. David was scared. Not just for him. For himself. For what this might expose. Sam knew one thing now. Someone out there was rewriting history, erasing people, covering tracks. He had always believed that the truth was a right worth fighting for, but now he was beginning to wonder if he had the strength to fight a system that had learned how to make truth disappear. And as the sun rose over the city, casting long shadows over everything he thought he knew, Sam realized the danger wasn't coming. It was already here. Sam didn't expect the twist to come from within his own side. But by the end of the week, as the paranoia deepened and the trail grew colder, it was David, his trusted attorney, the man who'd been by his side since the beginning, who shattered the fragile line between ally and enemy. It happened during what was supposed to be a quiet, off-the-record meeting at a downtown parking garage. Sam had grown more cautious, suggesting they meet somewhere without cameras or microphones, somewhere public enough to avoid a setup, but private enough to talk. David agreed, arriving 10 minutes late, visibly shaken, his hands trembling slightly as he lit a cigarette with the kind of urgency that didn't match his usually calm demeanor. He didn't wait long before saying the words that turned everything upside down. "Sam, I haven't been completely honest with you. I didn't come into this just to help you. I came to cover my own back." Sam froze. At first, he thought it was a slip, maybe stress talking. But David continued, and what he said next made the air in that garage feel thick enough to choke on. Years ago, during a stint with that private military contractor, David hadn't just witnessed unethical behavior. He'd been involved. His role wasn't just legal oversight. He helped write the non-disclosure contracts for high-level personnel, including medical officers who worked on classified psych evaluations. The kinds that used wounded veterans as test subjects. The kinds that left people like Dr. Julian Marks with no choice but to disappear. And Blackwell? He hadn't just been a random aggressor at a cafe. He'd been a protected asset, someone they deemed operationally valuable due to his connections, his ability to infiltrate certain veteran groups, and his silence, purchased and maintained by people like David. Sam felt his entire body go cold. The entire premise of their case, that this was about ADA rights and public discrimination, was only the surface. The real conflict ran far deeper, hidden beneath years of buried files, manipulated identities, and a network of individuals willing to destroy anyone who tried to expose it. David had joined Sam at first out of guilt. But as the case gained attention, and as more people like Jessica started disappearing, he realized something had gone wrong. The people covering their tracks weren't just doing damage control, they were eliminating liabilities. Sam, in his relentless pursuit of truth, had become the next target. And David? He wasn't sure anymore whether he'd been helping him or setting him up from the beginning. But then came the true twist, the piece that made everything even darker. David revealed that the incident at the cafe had been planned. Not by Sam. Not even by Blackwell. But orchestrated by a third party with access to both the VA system and private surveillance networks. The entire altercation, the denial of entry, the refusal to accept a service dog, it had been staged, filmed from multiple angles, and meant to trigger a viral outrage.
Why?
Because someone wanted to create noise. A spectacle. Something that would draw attention just far enough away from what was really happening. The silent erasure of whistleblowers and the sanitizing of old military programs that were never supposed to see daylight. Sam didn't want to believe it. It felt like too much. But as David handed him a drive with internal memos, doctored footage, and correspondence between names Sam didn't recognize but instinctively distrusted, the truth settled in like a sickness. He'd been used, not to bring justice, but to buy time for others to disappear, to scrub records, to change history before it could be revealed. Jessica's disappearance hadn't been a response. It had been part of the plan from the start. Maybe even her relationship with Sam had been guided, engineered. The final blow came when David leaned in and whispered, "You were never supposed to get this far. Someone once told me that if you can't stop a story, you distract from it." And that's what this was. Sam looked at him, searching his face for any trace of sincerity, any hint that this was all some elaborate test or twisted warning. But David's eyes said it all: regret, fear, and a resignation that he, too, had become a puppet in a system far more dangerous than either of them had imagined. And just when Sam thought it couldn't get worse, his phone buzzed. An anonymous message. A grainy photo. It showed Julian Marks, barely alive, strapped to a hospital bed in what looked like an underground facility. The caption underneath chilled him. "You're next if you don't stop."
The rules had changed.
The enemy was no longer one man or one incident. It was a machine. One that didn't care who it consumed. And now, Sam had to decide if he was going to run or burn it all down. The weight of what David had just revealed settled on Sam like a storm cloud, and with it came an unbearable tension that wrapped around his chest. Every breath felt like a fight. His mind raced through every conversation, every decision, trying to piece together how he had missed the signs. Had he been too naive? Too focused on the idea of justice to see what was right in front of him? Now, faced with the possibility that everything he thought he knew had been a carefully orchestrated illusion, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that he had crossed a line. There was no turning back. But it wasn't just the case anymore. It was personal. Every part of Sam's life, every ally he trusted, every connection he thought he had built over the years, now felt tainted with suspicion. The hardest part was realizing that someone close to him had known far more than they had let on, someone he had trusted completely. Jessica, the person he had believed to be just another victim in this twisted web, was now his only hope of understanding just how deep this rabbit hole went. If she had been part of the plan, as David suggested, Sam didn't know if he could ever forgive her. But if she had truly been a pawn, a casualty of the same forces pulling his strings, then she needed to be found. And Sam had to make a choice: keep digging and risk his own life, or stop, walk away, and pray it all ended before it tore apart anyone else. The drive back from the meeting with David felt like hours, even though it only took 20 minutes. His mind spun with impossible questions. He pulled into his apartment complex just before midnight, exhausted but more determined than ever. But as he stepped out of his car, his phone buzzed once more. It was from a private number. His stomach dropped. He answered it, barely able to steady his breath. "You've been a problem, Sam." The voice on the other end was calm, almost too calm. It belonged to someone he didn't recognize, but the message was crystal clear. "We're giving you a choice. Stop looking into this. Forget about your service dog case. Forget about Jessica. Or we make sure your little crusade ends here. We've already started, haven't you noticed? People like David, people like Jessica, they're expendable. They know too much, and you're starting to ask the wrong questions. Stay out of this, Sam. It's for your own good." The words burned through him, leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. But what made it worse was the chill that ran through his veins when the voice added, "We know where your sister lives. We know about your mother's illness. The choice is yours, Sam. Your family or the truth. What's more important to you?" The phone went dead before he could respond. His hand trembled as he lowered it, staring at the screen, the weight of the threat settling over him. For a moment, everything around him blurred, as if his mind was trying to block out the impossible choice in front of him. It was a decision that no one should have to make. His family. His duty to protect them. Or the truth. A truth that might expose a conspiracy so vast and dangerous that no one would come out unscathed. His heart hammered in his chest as the implications began to sink in. They weren't just threatening him anymore. They were threatening everything he loved, everything he had left. Sam had been through war. He had faced battles that shattered him, moments when death seemed certain, and yet he survived. But this felt different. This wasn't an enemy he could see, an enemy he could fight with his fists or a weapon. This was a shadowy force that could destroy everything without lifting a finger. His thoughts swirled, trying to come up with a solution, some way to protect his family, without giving up the fight for truth. But the choices kept closing in, each one darker than the last. The door to his apartment creaked open behind him, and Sam spun, his heart skipping a beat. It was just David, standing in the hallway with a look of concern etched on his face. "You got the call, didn't you?" he asked, his voice soft but urgent. Sam nodded. He didn't have the energy to speak. It felt like everything he had worked for, the truth he had been fighting to uncover, was now a deadly game. And the rules were being written by someone else. David stepped forward, locking eyes with Sam. "Look, Sam, I didn't come here just to warn you about them. I came to warn you about me." The words hit harder than anything Sam had heard all week. "You're right to be suspicious. I've been a part of this for longer than I care to admit. I didn't want to be, but I made a choice a long time ago. And now it's too late. I can't stop it. No one can." The confession hung in the air like smoke, thick with guilt and desperation. Sam could see it now, the hollow look in David's eyes, the same fear that had gripped his own heart just moments ago. But then David took a step closer, lowering his voice so that only Sam could hear. "If you want to save your family, Sam, you need to stop digging. You need to drop this. Walk away. It's the only way they won't come for your sister, your mother, everyone you love. You can't stop this war.
Not now.
Not after everything we've already done. Trust me, if you keep going, you'll be dead before the truth ever gets out." Sam stood there, frozen, unable to respond. His mind was locked in a battle of its own. Could he trust David? Could he trust anyone? The truth that he had fought so hard to uncover now felt like a burden, a threat to everything he had left. And yet, walking away would mean letting it all slide back into darkness, letting the people responsible for this destruction get away with it. It felt impossible, like a cruel, unending loop of choices with no clear way out. The seconds stretched on, the weight of the decision pressing down on him harder than ever before. Sam's chest tightened as he realized that the path ahead of him was no longer just about right or wrong. It was about survival. And even then, survival was no guarantee. The night was still, the air thick with the knowledge that whatever happened next, it would change everything. Sam didn't have time to dwell on David's confession. The more he thought about it, the more it made his skin crawl, but there was no room for hesitation now. The clock was ticking, and he was beginning to see the full extent of the web he had wandered into. The pieces David had given him weren't just fragments of one isolated conspiracy. They were part of something far darker, more complex, and more dangerous than Sam had ever imagined. The men in the shadows weren't just isolated agents, making quiet deals behind closed doors. No, they were organized, connected, an underground network that ran deeper than government agencies, far more powerful than the media, and far more pervasive than anyone could have known. Sam had been working under the assumption that he was fighting for justice, that the people he trusted had shared the same goals. But now, every thread he pulled unraveled a new layer of betrayal. Every ally he had made in the past weeks, every person he'd confided in, every friend he had thought would stand by him, none of them were as they appeared. As Sam's phone buzzed again, his blood ran cold. The message was brief, a single sentence that shook him to his core. "You're not the only one asking the right questions, Sam." At first, he thought it was just another threat, another attempt to manipulate him into silence. But as he looked closer, something caught his eye, an encrypted email attached to the message. His hands shook as he opened it, quickly scanning through the words. It was from a confidential source, someone within the very heart of the conspiracy. And it wasn't just talking about Jessica's disappearance or the shady dealings with David. It was about everything. The email detailed a massive operation, one that spanned not just the private sector but government agencies, military contractors, and even nonprofit organizations. People had been disappearing for years, systematically erased from the records to silence anyone who posed a threat to this well-oiled machine. And it didn't just stop at veterans, at service dogs, or the public cases Sam had been focusing on. It stretched out into every corner of the country, cutting through local businesses, law enforcement, and even the media. No one could be trusted. No one was safe. And the worst part? Sam realized that the biggest threat to his survival wasn't just the faceless men pulling the strings. It was the people closest to him. It was David, who had been feeding him half-truths, and Jessica, who had gone dark at the very moment Sam needed her most. But it wasn't just them. There were others, names he recognized, faces he had met during this investigation, people who had been pretending to help, all of them working to push him into the wrong direction. Sam had been played, used as a pawn in a game so large he didn't even know the rules. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. They weren't just trying to shut him down, they were trying to turn him against the very people he was trying to protect. They had been manipulating him all along. The messages, the threats, even the information about his family, it wasn't just intimidation, it was control. They were trying to force him into a corner, to make him choose between his family's safety and exposing the truth. And in that moment, Sam realized that he was no longer in charge of this fight. He was being controlled. His thoughts spun as he tried to make sense of what to do next, but before he could form a plan, the door to his apartment opened with a sudden crash. He whipped around to see a man in a dark suit, wearing sunglasses, even though it was well past midnight. The stranger moved with practiced precision, his eyes scanning the room like he'd done this 100 times. Sam reached for the gun he kept tucked in his waistband but froze as the man spoke in a calm, chilling tone. "You should have stayed out of this, Sam," the man said, his voice low, almost regretful. "You're out of your depth. But you had to go digging. You had to try and bring it all to the surface." He took a step forward, and Sam instinctively backed away, his pulse racing. "It's too late now. This isn't about a service dog anymore. It never was. You're playing with fire, and now you're going to get burned." Sam's heart hammered in his chest as he tried to steady his breath. This was it. The moment he had been waiting for, the showdown. But the stranger wasn't here to fight. He was here to end it, to shut him down once and for all. And as Sam stood there, facing the reality of what had been happening all along, the urgency of the situation settled in like a vice around his chest. He had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went, how far the conspiracy had stretched, but he was in too deep to back out now. His mind raced as the man stepped closer, each movement deliberate, and Sam knew that if he didn't act quickly, it would all be over. He turned, bolting for the door, but as he reached the handle, a sharp pain exploded through his side, and Sam gasped, looking down at the blood seeping through his shirt. The stranger had drawn a gun, silent, quick, effective. Sam staggered back, his body suddenly weak, but adrenaline surged through his veins. He wasn't done yet. He couldn't be. Not now, not when he was so close to uncovering the truth. But just as the darkness started to close in, another voice rang out, this time from the shadows, the doorway, where Sam had been moments before. It was David. But this time, he wasn't alone. A group of men, all dressed in dark suits, surrounded the apartment, each of them looking like they had been waiting for Sam's moment of weakness. David stepped forward, his face a mask of cold resolve. "You thought this was about you, Sam?" David's voice was almost sad. "You thought you were the one they were after? You're not even a footnote in their story. You never were." The truth slammed into Sam with the force of a truck. David wasn't here to help. He had never been here to help. He was one of them, another piece in a much larger game, a game that Sam had been playing without even realizing the stakes. And now it was too late to stop. Sam's heart pounded in his chest as David's words echoed in his ears, a brutal reminder of just how far he had fallen into a trap he never saw coming. He couldn't believe it. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to push back, but the crushing reality set in. David wasn't just some informant, some well-meaning whistleblower caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was the orchestrator, the puppet master pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Everything Sam had fought for, everything he had believed in, had been a carefully constructed lie. It wasn't about the service dog. It wasn't about the missing veterans or the shady government dealings. This was bigger. So much bigger. It was about power. Control. A network so vast that even the most dangerous elements of the system were just cogs in the machine. Sam's body trembled with a mix of fear and fury, but there was no time to break down. His thoughts spun wildly, and in that chaotic blur, something inside him snapped. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. This wasn't about getting justice for a handful of people who'd been wronged. This was about survival. About stopping a system so ingrained in corruption that it was threatening to swallow everything Sam had ever known. His family, his life, his very sense of identity. They wanted him gone. They wanted to silence him. But Sam couldn't let that happen.
Not now.
David stepped forward, his face void of the humanity Sam had once seen in him, replaced by a cold, calculating mask. You don't get it, Sam. This isn't a game you can win. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. You've dug too deep, and now, there's no way out. You think you can expose this? You're nothing but a minor inconvenience. A blip. When they decide to end you, it's over. And trust me, they'll end you. For a split second, Sam considered backing down. The gunshot wound in his side was burning, his body felt like it was made of lead, and every nerve screamed for him to run. But his mind was clearer now than it had been throughout the entire investigation. It wasn't about fighting David or running. It wasn't even about finding justice.
It was about stopping them.
Stopping whatever this was from destroying everything. His eyes scanned the room, looking for anything that could help him. The apartment was small, cluttered with stacks of papers and empty coffee cups, but nothing that could help him escape or overpower the men closing in on him. His gaze locked on the laptop sitting on the desk, the same one he'd been using to piece together the puzzle. It was still open, a series of encrypted files shining on the screen. His pulse quickened. There was something there, something he hadn't noticed before. He wasn't sure how he missed it, but that tiny, blinking icon in the corner of the screen, the one that was supposed to be deleted, wasn't gone. It was still there, like a breadcrumb left for him to find. Without thinking, Sam lunged toward the desk, his movements sloppy and desperate. His fingers trembled as he clicked on the file, the screen filling with a list of names. Names he recognized. People he had thought were just pieces in the background. People he'd trusted. But now, they were connected in a web of connections so intricate, it made his stomach churn. High-ranking officials. Military contractors. CEOs of major companies. Even politicians. Sam's mind raced as he scrolled through the list, realizing that the extent of this conspiracy was far beyond anything he had imagined. This wasn't just about corrupt government officials or powerful businessmen. This was a system, a network that controlled everything. And Sam had the key to exposing it all. But as the realization hit him, so did the pressure. The men in the suits were closing in. David's voice cut through the air again, calm but menacing. You think you can change this, Sam? You think you can make a difference? They'll find you, and they'll make sure you disappear. You're not even a ghost. You'll be erased, just like all the others. Sam's heart raced as the faces on the screen blurred, a final piece of the puzzle falling into place. The person he least expected was at the center of it all. His mind screamed at him to keep digging, to keep moving, but he couldn't.
Not now.
Not with David's words ringing in his ears. He had uncovered something too dangerous, too explosive to walk away from. But what was the cost? Was it worth it? The door to the apartment slammed open with a crash. Sam whipped around, his heart in his throat, expecting to see another set of dark suits, another round of men sent to finish the job. But what he saw instead left him frozen in place. Jessica. She stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes filled with something Sam couldn't place.
Fear.
Regret. Determination. Sam, no, she said, her voice shaking. You don't understand. It's not just them. It's me too. For a moment, Sam thought he was hallucinating. Jessica, the one person he thought could help him, the person he had trusted more than anyone else, was standing there, a traitor. His breath caught in his throat, and everything inside him screamed for him to fight, to do something, anything, but he was paralyzed, staring at the woman who had been his ally, his friend, now revealed as a pawn in a game much bigger than either of them. "You're part of this?" Sam asked, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. "You've been working with them?" Jessica's face twisted in pain. "I didn't have a choice, Sam. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to see everything we've been through get twisted like this? But I didn't have a way out. I thought I could help you, but I was wrong. You don't get to walk away from this. None of us do." The air between them thickened, suffocating him. The truth he'd been chasing, the one that had kept him awake at night, the one that had cost him everything, was now nothing but a terrifying, undeniable reality. There was no escape. Not for him. Not for Jessica. Not for anyone. The conspiracy was too vast, too embedded. And now Sam realized they were playing with lives, his, Jessica's, and everyone else's, like it was some game of chess where only the highest bidder could win. And then, just as he felt the weight of defeat pressing down on him, the last twist came. The sound of a gunshot rang out, louder than anything Sam had ever heard. It echoed through the room like the final nail in the coffin, and as Sam's vision blurred, he realized that someone else had entered the game. Someone unexpected. Someone who had been hiding in the shadows the whole time. A face he hadn't seen coming. And in that instant, everything Sam had thought he knew, every choice he had made, every ally he had trusted, was thrown into chaos. The mystery wasn't over. It had only just begun. As the dust settled, Sam stood there in the silence of the empty apartment, the echoes of the chaos still lingering in the air. The final gunshot had left an imprint in his mind, a jarring reminder that, even after everything, there were no guarantees. The person who had entered the room was gone now, vanished before Sam could even process what had happened. Jessica, too, had disappeared, her words still hanging in the air like a heavy fog that wouldn't lift. The truth was a cruel thing, and Sam had learned that it didn't come easily. It wasn't the kind of truth that brought clarity or peace. No, it was a bitter pill, one that left a taste of regret on the tongue, and a wound in the heart that might never heal. He glanced down at the laptop still open on the desk, the final pieces of the puzzle scattered across the screen. He had uncovered the names. He had exposed the network, but what did it matter now? The people he thought he could trust, the ones he believed had his back, had either betrayed him or vanished into the shadows. The conspiracy he had fought so hard to expose wasn't just a matter of government corruption or corporate greed. It was something far deeper, far more insidious. It was a system, a web of power and control that stretched far beyond what he could have imagined. And no matter how much he uncovered, it seemed like the walls were closing in on him, leaving him with more questions than answers. But as he stood there, his hand hovering over the keyboard, a strange feeling washed over him. A sense of finality, as though this was it, the end of the road. He wasn't going to get the kind of closure he had hoped for. He wasn't going to expose every name or take down the people responsible for the chaos he had unearthed. The system was too vast, too entrenched to be toppled by one man. And yet, in some strange way, that realization brought a sense of peace. Not because Sam had won or because he had found justice. No, he was too deep into this for that. But because, for the first time in a long while, he understood. He understood the game. He understood the stakes. And while he might not have been able to change everything, he had learned enough to fight another day. A small part of Sam, the part that still believed in justice, wanted to scream, to throw the laptop across the room and tear everything apart. But another part of him, the part that had seen so much darkness, simply walked away. There was nothing left for him here, nothing left but a broken system and the ghosts of the people who had tried to make a difference. And as he turned to leave, something caught his eye, a small, handwritten note on the desk. He hadn't seen it before, but now it stood out like a beacon. "Don't stop. You're not alone." The words hit Sam like a punch to the gut. Who had written it? Was it Jessica? Or someone else? Someone he hadn't even considered? The note was a reminder, a message that, even in the face of overwhelming odds, there were still people out there willing to fight. He had done his part. He had exposed the truth. But the fight was far from over. It wasn't over for him, and it certainly wasn't over for the millions of others who were trapped in the same system. The conspiracy had been revealed, but it wasn't the end of the story. It couldn't be. There were too many loose ends. Too many lives at stake. As Sam walked out of the apartment, the cool night air hit his face, and he felt the weight of the world lift, even if just for a moment. He wasn't sure what his next move would be. He wasn't sure if he was even safe anymore. But one thing was clear. The fight wasn't finished. He was just one small piece of a much bigger puzzle. And though he had been pushed to the edge, though he had been forced to confront the darkest parts of himself and the world around him, he had emerged with a purpose, a new understanding, and the fire to keep going. The camera lingered on Sam as he walked down the empty street, his silhouette fading into the night. The story had come to a close, but the questions remained. What would he do next? Would he expose the rest of the conspiracy? Or would he live the rest of his life in the shadows, always looking over his shoulder? The answers were unclear, but that was the point. Sometimes, the biggest mysteries don't have answers. Sometimes, they linger in the air, leaving us with a haunting sense of what might have been, and what still could be. The screen faded to black, and the last words appeared. The truth is out there. Will you find it? And just like that, Sam's story left a lasting mark, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, there's always something worth fighting for. The journey may be uncertain, but the fight for justice, for truth, never ends.